Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come and chat with us about one of our next Greenway trail projects, Torrence Creek Trib 2 Greenway. This is the section that will pick up where the current Greenway ends at Rosewood Meadow Lane, making a connection under I-77 over to Compass Street on the east side of I-77. My name is Bert Lynn. I am Capital Planning Division Director for Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation. And we've got a pretty packed agenda tonight, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So I am going to assume, like me, that most everybody on here is much more familiar with virtual platforms than they were 20 months ago. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. We ask that you stay muted during the presentation. We will have a time toward the end of our meeting for folks to ask questions and unmute themselves if they have anything that they would like to share. We also have the chat feature active for tonight. And so if you look at the chat bubble or button at the bottom of your screen, feel free to ask questions kind of throughout the presentation. We do have staff online that will provide some responses to some of those questions, and then we'll go back through and review those kind of toward the end of the meeting as well. So we'll test out the chat feature very quickly. If you would, just type your name and your favorite park or greenway in Mecklenburg County. And we'll make sure that everybody gets the chat going there. And Tristan, if you would, you can go on to the next slide. So this is a relatively short stretch of Greenway. It's less than a mile, kind of the main stem Greenway. It's just under a mile when we add in all of our access trails and everything. But there's a lot of moving parts here, and we've got a lot of team members here. So joining me from Mecklenburg County are project manager project manager Jen Brooks from our asset and facility management team, and our planner that's assigned to the project, Darnika Waters. Our primary consultants are Dewberry, and they're assisted by Terracon and Avio Image. And we're also working hand in hand with the town of Huntersville on this project, who also has an adjacent project that they'll share a little bit later tonight. Arts and Science Council, who is doing an exciting public art project within the tunnel as we cross under I-77. And we've been working with CATS in tying in the Greenway to the existing park and ride lot on the east side of I-77. And that's just a few of the entities that we've worked with kind of throughout. So several months ago, we started fun facts on our projects, and it seems to be a hit. So we decided that we'd add some fun facts to this particular project. So Torrence Creek Trib 2 actually begins just on the west side of Old Statesville Road, Highway 115, and it flows for 2 or 3 miles under I-77 before the confluence with Torrence Creek. The creek is named for the Hugh Torrence family. They settled in this area prior to the American Revolution, so they've been around here for a little while. And the historic site located at 8231 Gilead Road, near the existing Torrence neighborhood, which consequently is spelled differently than the name of the family, but it's not a typo. That's the way it's actually spelled. Like many of our facilities that we have, there are some unique natural features along this stretch. A lot of folks have commented on our public input site about the rocks that are featured kind of on this site and in other areas of Torrence Creek Greenway, as well as a rare northern cut plant that can be found along stretches of Torrence Creek and McDowell Creek nearby. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Darnika Waters, who's going to move us through some project overview.
Hello, everyone. What are greenways? Greenways are strips of undeveloped land near urban areas set aside for recreational use or environmental protection. We build greenway trails to activate this land as linear parks to connect people and places by linking neighborhoods, offices, parks, schools, and shopping areas. These trails provide alternate uh, these trails provide alternative ways to move about our city, suburbs, and small towns, both for transportation and recreation. Next slide. Paved walking and biking trails are number one amenity requested by Mecklenburg County residents per the citizen surveys completed as part of our 2015 and current 2020 master plan update. The current master plan calls for over 300 miles of greenway trails along our creeks and streams and over 200 miles of urban trails along roadways and urban areas. Next slide. Today, we have about 60 miles of greenway trails completed. Our goal is to add 30 new miles of trails between 2019 and 2023. To accomplish our goal and meet community demand, we and our partners are working on our accelerated greenway plan that includes over 40 miles of trails that is in either design or construction. Next slide. This map gives you an idea of where the accelerated greenway projects are located. The blue dots show projects that are funded through our 5-year capital improvement plan. The magenta dots show the 5 new projects that were funded in prior years to help our community demand and increase access to the trail network. Torrence Tributary 2, Greenway is one of those accelerated projects as shown circled in pink. Torrence Tributary 2 is in North Mecklenburg County in the town of Huntersville. Our project is circled in blue here on the map. Not only is this project's significance measured by how it connects state and local investments, will help provide a regional connection to the seam, formerly the Mooresville to Charlotte Trail as part of the Carolina Thread Trail. This slide here just zooms into our project. It shows our connection from Rosewood Meadow Lane all the way across the I-77 tunnel, or I-77 interstate rather, and terminates at the Cats Park and Ride on Huntersville Gateway. Next slide. All right, the next few slides will give you a sense of the existing characteristics of the site. Next slide. Our project location is home to a diverse range of wildlife, plants, and large rock formation. Next slide. All right, and now we're going to go into the project schedule. We expect to wrap design this winter with bidding occurring early next year. Construction is estimated to take about a year. Please note that these schedules are approximate and subject to change. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Tristan, who's the project manager, our prime consultant with Dewberry.
Thank you, Darnika. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm going to walk through just some of the more detailed aspects of the trail design here. So on your screen, you can kind of see an overall render. You can also see kind of superimposed over here on the west is the Rosedale Nature Park, which is currently being wrapped up by the town of Huntersville, and Tracy Hauk, who's on the call, will also talk a little bit more about this. But basically, we start over at Rosewood Meadow Lane here, which actually ties into the existing Torrance Creek Greenway over on the west side of Rosewood Meadow Lane. And then it goes for approximately 0.7 miles, about 0.75 miles roughly, over 2 bridge crossings. One of them occurs right here. And then it continues along next to the outcrop. And a good chunk of this is boardwalk. So it's navigating wetlands and relatively low. So you'll have some nice views of not only the stream, but these huge rock outcrops. Comes along here heading east towards 77. There's another bridge crossing here with some observation decks as you work your way up to either the Stone Hollow neighborhood or over to the Hunston Reserve neighborhood. And then you can continue east here, go through the tunnel at 77, exit at the Cats Park and Ride, where there's a connection here. And then there's two other connections, one over here on Hickorywood Hill Avenue and one over on Cordial Lane. And then one thing to note too, the connection on Cordial Lane is roughly about a 5-minute walk from Market Square, right at the bottom center of your screen. So just kind of zooming in and seeing a little bit more of these details. One thing you'll note, you can obviously see Torrence Trib 2, which is the bold blue line right here running through this, but you'll also notice some hatching and some other blue lines. So this is obviously, there's a lot of really great aesthetic value to this corridor, but there's also some significant challenges. One is most of it's in the floodplain, portions of it are in the floodway. So that means we've got to look at the hydraulics of the stream a little bit more carefully as we're designing this. The other thing you'll notice is you'll see some of these little dot patterns through here. There's a significant number of wetlands that we're trying to be sensitive to, which is why a lot of this is elevated boardwalk so we can avoid impacts to those wetlands. Coming across, we're kind of going west to east, just like we did on the previous slide. You can see here more of the rock outcrops. These are the actual surveyed rock outcrops. I know they look a little cartoony, but this is where they actually are in real world. So you can kind of get a sense of the size of these and where they are relative to the boardwalk. Some of these are pretty massive. You can see the second bridge here crossing over Torrence Trib 2 with the two neighborhood connections on the north, and then this one potentially down to Cordial Lane on the south. And then continuing to work our way east, you can see the connection over to Hickorywood Hill Avenue, and then the connection to the NCDOT tunnel under 77, where it ultimately will tie into the Cats Park and Ride, the Huntersville Gateway Park and Ride rather, sorry, right here. So with that, we've seen multiple connections now to the surrounding neighborhoods and to Cats. Just wanted to go over some of the common elements that you will see at some of these connections. A lot of times, obviously, we want to keep everything accessible. So there's a lot of flush transitions, but to limit vehicular access, you'll see bollards. A lot of times you'll see some of the split rail fencing. Typically, there may be some seating here, benches, trash cans, and then signage is usually a big part of what you'll see here as well. Typically, indicating the trail segment that you're on, as well as safety and rules that need to be adhered to. So as I mentioned earlier, this project has two different bridge crossings. These are two separate bridges. They look very similar, but these are very comparable to what we envision would be constructed for Torrence Trib 2. The one on the left is from Little Sugar Creek Greenway, and the one on the right is a more recent one from Plum Creek Greenway. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is probably going to end up being boardwalks, again, being driven by environmental constraints. So on the left, you can see a portion of a poured in place concrete boardwalk for Toby Creek Greenway. And then on the right, you can see another one from Campbell Creek Greenway. We wanted to include this one because not only does it show the bridge and the railing, but there are portions where it's lower where the railing may not be needed. So you'll end up with smaller curbing here just to keep people from, walking off the edge or rolling an ankle. As I mentioned earlier, signage is a big part of what you'll see at a lot of the Greenway connections and wayfinding. So these are just some of the example standard signs that you will see along the Greenway and at the entrances to Greenways. Many times, we try to incorporate kiosks where possible to help orient individuals and also to kind of give them a greater sense of where they are in context to the whole trail system, which, considering this connects to the existing Torrence Creek Greenway and it connects to the downtown Huntersville Greenway, which Tracy is going to talk about here next, would be a good thing to have to help orient yourself. And so with that, I will turn it over to Tracy Houck, who's the Assistant Park and Rec Director for the town of Huntersville.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you just a quick overview of two projects that are will eventually connect to this project. And first, we're going to start with the Rosedale Nature and Dog Park. So this is the west side of the park. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. just an overview of the nature park amenities. We will have a fitness trail, which is kind of that center top picture. There's also nature inspired playground. That is the top left picture. And on the bottom left, there is an overlook that is an open green space. And then the center, we will have a traditional playground as well. And then on the bottom right, there will actually be a slide built into that hill there. So it is a hill slide. So this is a very unique park in Huntersville. We don't have anything like it around. So it's good. It's awesome that it's going to connect to the greenways. Next slide. And now we're going to look on the east side of the nature park. And this is the first dog park in Huntersville. Go to the next slide. And so a little bit of the overview of the dog park amenities. I couldn't get good pictures of this because it really is just going to be a very shaded wooded dog park. We will have separate small and large dog parks, water stations, like I said, wooded, full shade majority of the day. And there will be a covered pavilion with benches as well. And to access the dog park, you will need to come off of the Greenway and head east via the sidewalk. In the master plan, we originally had a connection, but we ended up moving. If you go to the next slide, I think we ended up moving, well, we didn't. Mecklenburg County ended up moving the Greenway to kind of accommodate our park a little bit better. And so where that blue star is where the Greenway will connect into our park. And if you go to the next slide, where the sidewalk ends and the boardwalk begins is that blue star there. And then the downtown Greenway, if you look at the bottom right, is all the way in the east side of where this project is. Actually, the ribbon cutting for first phase 1 of the downtown Greenway is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. But it does have a trailhead with some swings that you can enjoy the scenery and the weather. And then the paved trail right now is just, I think the full trail when it's done and finished will be about 0.6 of a mile. And we currently, phase 1 is within Holbrook Park there. Tristan's moving the mouse around it. That one is completed and we are getting ready to start phase 2 soon. And then I am going to introduce Todd Stewart with ASC.
Thanks, Tracy. So I'm Todd Stewart. I'm ASC's Vice President of Public Art. And I wanted to give you all a brief update on the public artwork that we're partnering with Mecklenburg County Parks and Rec for the Torrence Creek Tunnel. Our selected artist is Project One Studio. The lead artist for that is Adam Puente. Next slide, please, Tristan. So as was pointed out earlier, early on in our planning efforts, we identified the I-77 tunnel along this greenway as an appropriate location for the artwork. The reason we selected that was we felt it would serve a function as well as being like just really visually impactful. I think it's roughly 300 feet of tunnel space. It is quite dark. So we're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone by providing lighting to the tunnel, but also a really exciting aesthetic enhancement. Next slide, please. So Project One Studio is pretty unique in that they blend an architectural practice with their public art and art fabrication practice. We hosted a community workshop or community dialogue on April 22nd of this year. And some resounding feedback we heard was, the importance of the creek system, tie it back to the natural landscape, let that be the inspiration for the artwork. And I think the artists heard that loud and clear. They kind of went back to the drawing board on what they were deriving their imagery from and really focused on Torrence Creek and McDowell Creek. So what you can see here is a series of images where they took that kind of fractal flowing stream and then abstracted it through a series of algorithms to get to this series of dotted patterns that I'll show you in the next slide. And this is what that looks like distilled down. The reason for this is The title of this, or working title of this artwork, is State of Flow. The connectivity to the stream, the recreational use of the Greenway Trail, the appreciation for nature is all things that the artist wanted to wrap in. So rather than just literally depicting the stream, they wanted to take that and take the fluid motion of people running through the trail, the fluid motion, of course, of the water, and really abstract those and create something that people could approach from multiple perspectives. Next slide, please. The artists have chosen what is called gobo projection lanterns. So this will be static imagery, but actually high intensity in terms of the lumens put out, so that it should be really vibrant within the tunnel. And it'll be a series of dots or circles, with each having its own pattern that extends from one end of the tunnel to the next. And the state of flow, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, that can relate to the waterways, kind of a mental state that can be achieved via exercise, observing nature, or just the different activities in which you can kind of get into a calming headspace. And next slide. And here's a 3/4 view of what this could look. This is one of the renderings that Project One Studio put together. You can see the gobo lanterns on either side, so the circle patterns will extend on either side of the tunnel. Along the central ceiling portion of the tunnel, they are adding other light fixtures that will give kind of like an even, soft light pattern, for safety, because we did consult with NCDOT to make sure that this will be safe for use, regardless of what time you're using the trail system. And I think that's last slide is just some further information. So I'm joined here tonight with my project manager for public art, Randella Foster. And if you would like if you have any questions or you want any further info on this, please do not hesitate to reach out to either myself or her. You can find more project information on our website. The link is provided there, and then to ASC's broader website, and then a specific link to resources for public art on ASC's website. And with that, I will pass it on to Brian Naldone with CATS.
Great, thanks, Todd. Can you guys hear me? Good. All right, so Brian Nadolny with CATS, project manager working on the North Corridor Bus Rapid Transit project. So we have a 5-corridor system. We did a link system update in 2017 through 2019 and reevaluated each of the corridors. In the North Corridor, the project that was the locally preferred alternative is the commuter rail project called the Red Line. And that line is on Norfolk Southern tracks. Norfolk Southern currently has a rail policy that doesn't want to share freight trains with passenger trains. So we reevaluated all the different options, and with this great amenity in the North Corridor of the hot lanes, we see this valuable BRT system that can happen in the near term, while the Red Line commuter rail is still the vision for the long term in the corridor. So the project, this is just an overview. First, we have 4 existing park and rides throughout the corridor, including right here at Huntersville Gateway. And then we would be expanding to 3 more up in Mooresville, Davidson, and 1 at Hambright, which is currently in design. We're also looking to utilize potential new direct connections, which are ways to access directly into the hot lanes instead of getting on at general purpose interchanges and then working your way over to them. There's currently 2 existing direct connects at Hambright and Lakeview and Green, but we're looking at ways to increase and enhance other ones along the corridor. And then finally, in Brown is in Center City, Charlotte, as these buses come into town and get off of the hot lanes. It's how do these buses interact with the city streets and have that prioritization and the amenities so that when you get off, you can get to your final destination in Uptown Charlotte efficiently. So, and then we're also looking at things like first and last mile opportunities. There's an autonomous shuttle pilot program that might happen in Davidson next year. So we're excited about looking different alternatives for that. Next slide. The other thing about all these park and ride lots is that we really look at these as mobility hubs, so that they can serve several different features. You know, there's major bus transfer centers, you know, bike sharing there, and electric car charging, maybe long-term bike parking. Lots of different amenities and qualities to these. There'll be different sizes, so certain mobility hubs will have a different level of amenities versus other ones. And here in Huntersville is our most popularly used park and ride system, or park and ride lot in our system pre-pandemic. So you know, this one will be a major mobility hub for us. Next slide. So as we look at expanding the service here, the existing park and ride lot has 311 spaces. And we did a parking analysis study, and that the future need could go up to 640 spaces. So we're looking at ways to expand the lot. You can see some land to the north of the red box and north of the Greenway. There's a possibility for us to expand there, or either there or do some sort of multi-levels at the existing park and ride lot. And we're looking at concepts that directly from the red box here can go into the median, flying over the lanes and dropping right into the median for our buses, so they don't have to work their way through the road network and get on the general purpose interchange. And of course, you know, you can see where the Greenway attaches here. This Greenway will, the trail will end directly into the park and ride lot. Katz is very excited about this because, you know, this brings a whole new set of potential customers. And the people that live on the west side of the highway that currently have to drive down Gilead and up 21 to get to our park and ride lot, now we'll have those alternative ways to get to the park and ride lot through biking and walking, direct access to our lot. Next slide. So I mentioned the link system update that happened in the past, and that just kind of came up with the conceptual plan. And our current study, we're detailing the evaluation for the locations of the stations and those direct connects. And we're working with our partners, of course, the I-77 mobility partners will be working with. We're getting community input. There's a public meeting on November 18th. And finally, it'll end in site selection. And then next year, we plan on starting design and the environmental studies, looking at how the operations will happen for the BRT throughout the system, and then come up with an implementation strategy where we can look at different federal programs and state programs for funding opportunities. And then we start construction once the design and environmental is done. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bernie.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Oh, excuse me. Just had to admit someone. Hello, we're going to kick off questions now. I'm going to go ahead and address one question that was in the chat. It was, will the tunnel be illuminated dusk to dawn? And how will graffiti, vandalism, and other issues be deterred within the tunnel? The tunnel will be illuminated 24 hours daily. It's actually quite dark even during daylight. The lights will be programmed to respond to the time of day with varying brightness. So this will allow for smoother adjustment of eyesight upon entering and leaving the tunnel. In relation to graffiti and vandalism and other issues within the tunnel, we are working with the artists to secure those projectors and the camera. We're trying to install a camera, coordinating with PD to install a camera in the tunnel. Question. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention the tunnel walls are painted gray, so that falls in line with what our maintenance folks usually deal with in regards to graffiti. So if there is anyone spray painting in the tunnel, our maintenance guys will come through with that gray paint and just paint over it. Next question in the chat is, has there been any discussion about including an emergency blue light box like what you see on college campuses near the Greenway tunnel? We did discuss this, and we decided that to go with the camera in the tunnel because those emergency blue light boxes can be very finicky, and sometimes people like to play pranks the same way people use the call button in an elevator when it's not an emergency. So we don't want anyone calling, calling wolf when there isn't one, when there isn't an emergency.
Yeah, Darnika, I'd add to that. One, change that's happened over the last, 10 or 15 years is most people, when they're out on the greenways, have a cell phone with them. And there's also some technical challenges with having any kind of electricity related items within the floodplain, which most of this project is. One element that we are beginning to work on now is geo-referencing all of the signage that we have on our greenways. And I was actually had a meeting last week with Greg Klimmer, who's my counterpart, who oversees park operations. So we are going to geo-reference every sign that we have. So if you say I'm on Torrence Creek, Trib 2 Greenway, I'm at mile marker 1.5. Emergency services will know exactly where you are in space and will know the closest access point to you and the quickest way to get to you. So that is something that we're continuing to keep in mind and work toward making our greenways as safe as possible.
Thank you, Bert. Next question is, can you please speak to the planned crossing of Highway 21? Understand this might be part of Huntersville Greenway, not Torrence Creek, but it seems to be the most dangerous part of Greenway to cross. Will there be an underpass? Currently, as plans of crossing Highway 21 is to use overland connections. Excuse me. There is a planned NCDOT project for Highway 21 to make road improvements. I think the current status of that is, I think it was, it was put on pause.
No, it's moving, Darnika.
It's moving?
Yep.
Tracy, would you like to speak more about that?
Well, you're correct in everything that you said. It is going to be an overland connector right there. Tristan was moving his mouse around it at Compass Street. We did look at going under, if you follow the creek just to the north of Compass Street. That project, the 21 improvements actually stop pretty much just at Compass Street. And so for us to go under, those are in another phase of 21 improvements. So there is still a possibility of rerouting to go under in the future, but currently the plan is to cross at an overland connector at Compass, and then it'll continue to the Greenway. There will be adequate signage and crosswalks and everything at that section. And there will also be a light that you will be crossing at. You won't have to play Frogger, but you might still be playing Frogger, but.
Yeah, Tracy, I want to think that at some point, maybe very early on in the county's project here, we looked kind of as a group at whether or not we'd even be able to physically get a connection under. And I think, the stream in that area is very narrow, the channel's narrow, and there's not a tremendous amount of vertical clearance through there. And then once you get over to the east side of Statesville Road, how you make the other connections that we're trying to make eventually to the elementary school and the park and downtown, it's a little bit more difficult to go in there.
Yes.
And I would agree that grade separated is always the way to go. We strive for that. But it's not always a viable option, unfortunately.
All right. The Greenway comes very close to homes at the end of Blossom Hill Drive in Rosedale neighborhood. Will residents be notified about the construction? The answer there is yes. We will do our best to inform all residents when we begin construction.
And we'll do that with a combination of, we'll have construction signs up at certain areas, kind of the access points where there will be traffic in that area. And then we can send postcards out to nearby residents as well.
Thank you, Bert. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I'll say I don't see anything else coming up in the chat right now. If anybody has anything they'd like to share or ask, feel free to unmute yourself and do so. I will say a lot of the comments that we've gotten through our public input website have been, can you start construction sooner? We're ready to get this project on the ground so we can use it. So we're trying our best. We're trying our best to get it to you. So I do see Tracy has added her contact information. If you have any questions for town staff, Katie Lloyd on our senior planner from our group has added the public input website. We'll keep the comment section open there, and there's also contact information there for our project team. Tristan, if you'll go to the final slide that's got our project team info. I'll come back to that. Yeah. Darnica Waters, Jen Brooks, and Tristan McManus are the people who know every in and out of this project. I only know kind of the very high level stuff. But they are the folks who are definitely in the know. If you've got questions about other park and recreation projects, if you go back, I think maybe one slide there, Tristan, you can get to Mecklenburg County's Park and Recreation website. Actually, you can just type in parkandrec.com and it goes straight to our website, or you can use the official mecnc.gov/parkandrec to get there. And we've got a lot of information there about some of our recent projects, some upcoming projects, programs, and special events. I see Commissioner Powell is on, and she noted that this trail is going to be very crowded once it's complete, and I would agree with that. And I would add, we've got some upcoming extensions of McDowell Creek Greenway to the north. Torrence Creek now ties into McDowell Creek, and so within, I would say, 2 to 3 years, we're going to have an additional, including this project, 3 to 4 miles of trail as part of this system. So it's going to be one of the longer systems that we have within the county.
Yeah, if you go, and I know there was a slide that you had on there that was the priority greenways in Huntersville. It shows kind of the whole system that will be connected up in the North Mecklenburg area.
And I see that Neil just asked a question about the schedule for McDowell. Tune in to our McDowell Creek Greenway meeting in, is it 3 weeks away? I think December 16th. I think we nailed down that date today.
Yeah, that's the slide.
Yeah. So the red line on the left side of the page there is upcoming connection for extension of McDowell Creek Greenway. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions or anything they would like to share, we'll let you guys go a few minutes early tonight. So we appreciate your time and look forward to getting this project started and finished and moving on to the next one. So thank you all.
Thank you.